There have been a couple of awesome first half performances, one that we hoped for and expected, but there's also one that was very surprising. We'll get into that on this Locked On Reds podcast.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, you're Locked On Reds, and Jeff stole my cold open. I wasn't ready for this. You're Locked On Reds, your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker, the cold open stealer. He's Jeff Carr over there. We love baseball. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We have a combined 12 years of experience covering this team in podcast form because we love baseball. We love this team that doesn't always love us back, and we love talking baseball with you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to look back at the first half of the season. We're going to be talking about who surprised us. We're going to be talking about who let us down. We're going to be talking about what we can expect moving forward. We're going to be talking about the things we liked and the things that we didn't. And of course, because we are live today here on YouTube, we're going to be taking your questions and comments along the way. All right, Jeff, we are at the All-Star break. The All-Star game is tonight. We've got Elly Cruz and Hunter Greene representing the Redlegs. We've got David Bell in potential ejection territory, being in the dugout down there. He's not going to get tossed, but God, I would love to see him get run in the All-Star game. It would just be fun for me. I'm looking forward to Elly. Elly's going to get a steal in this game. If anybody has any sense at all involved with the management of this National League team, Elly Cruz will come into the game as a pinch runner. That's just the way you do it. You put him in as a pinch runner. He gets his steals out of the way. Then you leave him in to play some defense and get an at-bat later. That's the way that I would do it. But Jeff, let's do this. Let's talk about the first half of this season. There are some performances that are, yeah, I know you're a stickler for that. It's not half the number of the games. All right. Pre-All-Star break, sir. Let's talk about the performances of the Reds that we feel like were the best of the first half. Let's do a pitcher. Let's do a position player. And, since you stole the cold open, I'll let you go first on this as well. Which pitcher for you is representative of the biggest first half, biggest pre-All-Star game performance for the Reds in 2024?
Hunter Greene. Hunter Greene has had the best first half pre-All-Star break. It's easier to type first half into the background here on YouTube, so that's why it says that. I'm just not the biggest fan of it because it's been more than half the season. Anyway, he's had the best first half of any Reds pitcher on the roster, and quite frankly, he has hit every single checked box that we wanted to. He's got a lot of great command on the fastball. He's added a third pitch. The splitter really looks like it's a weapon for him, although he doesn't have to throw it, 20% of the time or whatever like that. But the number of times that he does throw it, it is a weapon. And the slider has just been absolutely phenomenal. We talk so much about the fastball command and the splitter that we kind of forget about the slider. That is his easiest out pitch that he has. It is just so dynamic whenever he drops a slider in somebody that's expecting the fastball. So he has really grown leaps and bounds. And we said this on opening day when he was snubbed. And people were like, Frankie Montas for opening day starter? David Bell and Derek Johnson laid this on the table. They put down the gauntlet and they said, "You're not there yet, Hunter." And he took it exactly how we wanted him to, and he has absolutely taken a huge step forward.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against Hunter Greene. I'm going to, but it's hard to argue against him because, if I'm being honest, that's who I would have picked too had I gone first, Jeff. He had a tremendous season. He responded well to the challenge. They basically, you did. You're on a roll today. He responded exactly how the Reds wanted him to respond. They wanted him to be the ace. They're paying him like he's the ace. And then they kind of smacked him upside the head with a guy named Frankie Montas. So I like how Hunter responded. If for the sake of argument and having a little conversation about this, if I'm going to pick somebody different, what if I told you that Nick Lodolo has been just as good as Hunter Greene, although he has had a few less starts? As a matter of fact, Hunter Greene has 19 starts. Nick Lodolo has 14. But in that time, Nick Lodolo has a little bit better of an ERA. Hunter at 3.34. Nick Lodolo's at 3.33. They both have an ERA plus of 130. Nick Lodolo is better in his walks per 9. Hunter Greene has walked 3.7 per 9 inning, while Nick Lodolo's only walking 2.8. Now, Hunter does have him on strikeouts by 1 strikeout per 9. Hunter Greene's strikeouts per 9 is 10.3. Nick Lodolo's is 9.3. I think that Nick Lodolo has really showed us something. It's not a surprise, so I didn't want to use him for the next segment, but he's had a tremendous first half coming off of injury, battling, fighting the blisters, doing all the things. I think that Nick Lodolo, if Hunter Greene is ace 1A of this staff this season, I don't believe that Nick Lodolo is a number 2 starter. Nick Lodolo is ace 1B, and that's a great for the Reds to have in the second half.
That might be the biggest development of the pre-All-Star break season for this Reds team, is that the 2 guys who we had tabbed to lead this rotation just a couple of years ago are really stepping up into those roles. I feel extremely comfortable with them every 5 days out. Remember, even just last year, there was a little bit of concern with Hunter Greene every 5th day out. Seemed like he was still a little bit erratic. Nick Lodolo, of course, missed most of last season. He did make a couple of starts, but you'd have to squint to remember any of them just because he was hurt so much. And so here we are wondering, coming into 2024, what this pitching staff is going to look like, because it felt like it was all kind of on their shoulders. And they've put the pitching staff back on their shoulders. It's been very awesome to see because, yeah, Nick Lodolo has dealt with a few injuries here and there, and we are a little bit concerned about the blister issue to see if that can get rid of it. But, I mean, he is fantastic.
Just a quick aside, not part of what we talked about doing, but I did say on the last show that I reached out to our buddy Chris Welsh to talk to him about blisters and how they used to handle them back in the day. Because I could have swore they used to use super glue or put something on there to try and protect it. Chris told me that, yes, they did try that new skin stuff over top of the blister, or kind of like a glue. He said the problem is it peeled off right away. He said there's some really old school coaches that would tell young pitchers to pee on their hand if they got a blister, just to,
that's the jellyfish sting.
That's apparently, listen, there are the multitude of things that the answer to it medically is pee on it would astound you. It's probably the original medical treatment. I don't know, but Chris's real answer, after he told me those things and I laughed a little bit, the real answer is he says Nick Lodolo will probably have to change his grip. The only way that he's going to be able to prevent this is to change his grip, which means learning a new pitch, really, right? I mean, you're going to have to change the grip to get the same effect. That's going to be problematic. What I envision is we're going to be seeing Nick Lodolo deal with this blister problem throughout the rest of the year.
That's going to be interesting to see. That might knock me down a peg as far as my enthusiasm for him, but we'll see how he can kind of deal with it. He's dealt with it pretty well so far. His performances have been good, but that's been the pitching. On the hitting side of things, I stole yours. You go ahead. You pick your first hitter.
All right. So hitter-wise, the easy, obvious answer here is Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz continues to just astound. He continues to just be electric, be the guy. He leads the team in OPS plus at 128, Jeff. Batting average, 256. On base percentage, 346, which is great. He's slugging 483. That's good for an OPS an OPS of 830. Listen, Elly has stolen 46 bases. He's got 17 home runs, 43 RBIs. He's only been caught 9 times now. And I know it feels like more than that, right? Like, I know people get frustrated when the aggressiveness gets Elly thrown out on the base paths, but he's only been caught 9 times with 46 steals. I love what Elly De La Cruz is doing. I hope that there is a uptick in his defense heading through the second half of the season. I believe that he leads all of baseball's shortstops in errors with something like 17 or 18, somewhere in that neighborhood. When I looked it up early last week, he led with like 16. So I know he's had a few more since then. But by and large, Elly De La Cruz has done the things that we needed Elly De La Cruz to do. He's only going to continue to get better. So for me, he's the best performer of the first half as far as a position player goes.
There's a point, too, about those errors. This is something I was looking at the other day, and I haven't seen a lot of people reference this, and if they have, and I've just blinked on it, I'm sorry. But the first 2 full seasons of Barry Larkin's career, he had 47. I think it was 47 or 48 errors. What would have happened if they moved him off shortstop because of the errors?
He probably
Like
is not a
that,
Hall of Famer. So.
and you don't make this point. You don't make the point that he's bad at defense because of the number of errors, but there are lots of people that do, and there are a lot of people that really love to use this and couple it with the strikeout total and the strikeout percentage and say this is why he isn't good. If we did that, Barry Larkin wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. So there you go. My player that I would pick, since I can't pick Elly, you picked Elly, and I picked Hunter, you picked Elly. We both kind of agree that it's Hunter and Elly, but for argument's sake, there is a guy that has a very good argument, but I'm very surprised that he does, which makes me think that he kind of fits into our next segment, because we're going to look at a couple of huge surprises for the 2024 season, as well as a couple of huge disappointments pre-All-Star break. That is coming up next.
Summertime means baseball takes center stage, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Every single day, there is something for everyone. Every day, all summer long. You can do the Elly parlay. It's Elly plus 1 or more steals, 1 or more runs scored, and 2 or more total bases. Now, he's not going to get that in today's All-Star game. Don't think he'll be in the game long enough to do all of those things, but hey, stranger things have happened. But when the regular season resumes on Friday, get in on the action over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com and you can add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
And you can take advantage of the Midsummer Classic with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks is so awesome because all you have to do is you pick your favorite players in your favorite stat categories, and you click more or you click less, and you put together 2 or more of those entries, and boom, you see the dollars roll in. And in some cases, you only need to put together like 4 picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. We're talking about turning $10 into $1,000 just like that. And with the All-Star game going on, there's so many different players and so many different stats that you can click more or less on. I think Elly's getting a steal in this one. I don't know, like, I put him in there. Seems only obvious to me. He's going to go crazy in this game. Hunter Greene, I'm guessing he's going to get a couple of strikeouts as well. Click more on those. And then, Paul Skeens is starting. I guess the Pirates got something there, whatever. Click a couple on his strikeouts. Click more on those. Go to Prize Picks, download the app today, and use the promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's the Prize Picks app and the promo code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Yeah, I know, I flipped that around just to see if you were paying attention. Also, by the way, everydayers out there, appreciate you all joining us here for this live show. Appreciate you making us part of your day every single day. Coming up on the next show, we are going to look a little bit more in depth at the Reds draft. We're going to break down a few of the players that the Reds have selected. They got a couple of really good values when it came to day 2 and day 3. And so we're going to look at a few of those coming up on the next Locked On Reds. That's why you're not going to see a ton of draft coverage on this particular episode, because we're talking about leading into the All-Star break, the up and down season that has been. I don't think that the Reds have hit their peak yet, which is a good thing because they haven't been super good. But part of the good of the first half pre-All-Star break was Jonathan India. Jonathan India went crazy really over the last 2 months. It's almost 2 calendar months now that we can look at his performances and just see a fantastic hitter that he has been really the number 2 guy. Like if you're ranking the offensive performances and the guys that have carried this lineup, it's Elly and it's India. India has been the guy that, with TJ Friedl being out, the Reds really not having a leadoff guy in Friedel's stead, Jonathan India stepped up in a huge way. And the fact that he has had to play second base all year, which, based on his Rookie of the Year season, people would be like, had to play second base all year? Remember, back in December, we were talking about him playing left field. Because we're like, how do we get his bat in the lineup? And we just put his glove somewhere on the field. Well, he's been playing second base all season. And while his defense has still not been fantastic, it does look like it's improved ever so slightly. Overall, if you're looking for a Robin to Elly's Batman, it's Jonathan India.
Oh, do I get to talk now? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally just kidding. You're all over the place today. No, the numbers support everything you're saying, Jeff. Jonathan India is number 2 on this team in OPS plus, according to Baseball Reference. He has 124, so 24% above league average to Elly De La Cruz's 128. So, he's right there with Elly. If you look at WAR, the numbers, especially B WAR, the numbers are a little bit different. I think the stolen bases factor a lot into that, because right now, for Baseball Reference in WAR, Elly De La Cruz is at 3.4. He is screaming towards all-star level WAR, and he'll probably get there 2 to 3 weeks after the break here. Jonathan India is a little bit farther back. He's at 1.9. But you're right. Jonathan India has gone from being a guy that was a man without a home, wondering if he was going to be traded, wondering what kind of deal the Reds were going to give him. I think now that the Reds, you can look in hindsight, given everything that's happened, and that 2-year deal they gave Jonathan India seems very, very smart at this point. It created some stability for Jonathan. Jonathan, in turn, leaned into the whole "I'll play anywhere, I'll do anything," but ultimately ended up at second base. His defense has gotten better, but let's be honest, he's never going to be a Gold Glove second baseman, and I'll be very interested to see how August is handled when a certain little shortstop / second baseman spark plug Matt McLean comes back. But for now, Jonathan India is doing a good job of holding down that spot over there.
This is something I think of a lot when I watch him play second base on a fielding basis. If you had to make a play, we're talking like a ground ball, it doesn't look like an obvious play, but it's a play that you could make if you're a professional second baseman. Who do you pick between Jonathan India and Scooter Gennett? Because I feel like they're both very similar.
They are very similar. Probably I go with India. I probably go with India, just given bigger track record, bigger sample size, bigger. Yeah, I would reluctantly take Jonathan India.
It's not the best discussion. It's just something that has kind of come up in my mind, random thought when it comes to his fielding. But yeah, like I think that whenever Matt McLean comes back, second base is still his. You just got to figure out exactly where you put in India, like DH, left field, something, put him somewhere and keep him in the lineup, because he has been phenomenal.
All right, there's another guy I think, as far as surprises go, Jeff, that I'm really surprised at their performance this year as far as a hitter, and for me, that is Jake Fraley. He has dealt with things that nobody should have to deal with in his personal life, and yet he continues to go out there and try and help the team and do the things that are asked of him. From a statistics standpoint, Jeff, he's been slightly below league average, a 91 OPS plus, fine. But you look at his numbers, and they're 277, 330, 351. What's surprising here is the 277. He has hit the ball, and he's hit the ball well, and he's put the ball in play, and he's got on base, and he's done all of those things. The surprising thing for me here, Jeff, is when you start looking at his slugging, when you look at his home run totals, he's got one dinger in the first half. He's hit one home run. I don't know where his power has gone. I don't know why his power has gone, but it's been a huge surprise. It's like one of the biggest surprises of the first half for me, that suddenly this guy that we talked about could be a potential number 4 hitter in this lineup versus right-handed pitching is now a slap hitter guy. And don't get me wrong, he's been great at getting on base, and if that's the role he's going to have on this team, then fine. But it's just a big surprise to me where we've ended up with Jake Fraley.
I hesitate
I want to say not a disappointment. I'm not disappointed the fact that he's hitting nearly 300. I think that's great. I'm really surprised at how he's getting on base and how he's achieving his numbers.
I wonder though, like, does that lessen his profile for you? Because for me, that kind of makes him a 4th or a 5th outfielder.
It absolutely does. It's just really a shocker for me. Like I said, I looked at him as a potential candidate for that power hitting cleanup spot when there was a right-handed pitcher on the mound, and now that's out the window. I mean, to me, he's like a 5 or 6 hitter that you use against right-handed pitching, and you're looking at him to be a table setter for other guys in the lineup. And I never in a million years would have guessed that this season.
Yeah, it's kind of been a thing, and I keep monitoring it. Like, he had a triple the other day, and I was like, "Ooh, is he breaking out of this? Or we're going to start to see some more extra bases from his bat?" And it just hasn't quite been there yet, but hopefully he can kind of turn that around. So out of surprises, and he's kind of an interesting segue to me because I would label him as a fringe surprise disappointment as Jake Fraley for me. The obvious biggest disappointment for me is Will Benson. And I say that because he has been available. Like, you could make the argument that Noelvi Marte is the biggest disappointment because he made himself unavailable, and now that he is available, he's not performed well. But I'm still going with Will Benson because it really felt like he put in the work this offseason. All the reports were he was working hard to get rid of that platoon split, to be the everyday guy. And not only has that not worked, but now he's not hitting right-handed pitching either. And that is something that last season the Reds did phenomenally well, where they limited his struggling opportunities against left-handed pitching. They did not throw him out there that much against lefties. They kept him out there against righties, and he really flourished. But you can't even really do that this year. He's done a lot of swinging and missing. His strikeout rate is just absolutely astronomical. And it's something that whenever he was traded here, our friends over at Locked On Guardians kind of told us a little bit. They said his strikeout rate might be a little bit higher than normal, but that's more so because he has a conservative eye. He's going to look at strike three a lot, but he's been swinging at strike three almost twice as much this season. So I really wonder what it is we need to do, because the Reds cannot send him down at this point. And I know that there's a lot of people that are probably thinking, well, anybody's better than Will Benson. Not really. I mean, if you're calling up, if you're bringing up the rabble of outfielders that we've seen that are not named
Hurtubise and Dunn, like that's
they're worse. They've actually had worse batting averages, worse slugging percentages. So right now you kind of got to sink or swim until the Reds make a move or TJ Friedl comes back and stays back. I don't know what that looks like. And I know that our last report was it's going to be like a week to 10 days after the All-Star break that TJ Friedl will return. But as it stands right now, like, you got to roll with Will Benson. And that's been a huge issue for this team. And I hate that because I feel like once he gets right, this lineup will begin to look a lot more consistent. Just don't know when that is.
Right. On the disappointment standpoint, I'm not sure where I want to go. I have a couple thoughts here, but real quick, honorable mention for biggest first half performance, biggest surprise, Rece Hinds in his 7 games before the All-Star game. Whew, big surprise. 423, 464, 1.192 if we're talking about a slash line to wow the folks. Rece Hinds has been tremendous. Let's see if it holds up. I look forward to what he can do in the second half. But as far as disappointments go, Jeff, I'm teeter-tottering back and forth between 2 names, and those names are Graham Ashcraft and Christian Encarnacion Strand. Both players are now injured, but before they were injured, they were bad. Both of them, just bad. CES never, ever went on a heater. Not once. Not before he got injured. Obviously not after we had the mystery injury with the hit by pitch.
That he was dealing with all along.
Yeah, that he was dealing with all along, I guess. I don't know. Listen, he was bad, and it was a disappointment. And then there's Graham Ashcraft, who never really quite got it going, was terrible, demoted twice. And then after the second demotion, we hear, he was pitching through a sore elbow and on his way down to Louisville, stopped at the old 24-hour MRI machine somewhere in Lexington. And we find out that he has an elbow injury. So, those 2 players for me have been both big disappointments and also re-emphasize, refocus on my utter disapproval and disappointment in the way that the Reds handle injuries, in the way that the medical staff deals with players that are hurt. That might be my biggest disappointment, is that those people still have jobs with this team.
Yeah, and it's can you be called a disappointment if you're expected to do what you keep doing? I don't know that it's a disappointment at that. They are who we thought they were. I guess
exactly.
Should be, to quote the late great Dennis Greene. But when it comes to this medical stuff, like, that's what makes me worry about our constant, optimistic reports about Matt McLain. Because I feel like if this team gets Matt McLain back, this team can go on a run. Because they're one Matt McLain away. And also it's a key to remember, I'm talking about the Matt McLain when, he really took off. Not like post-injury Matt McLain last year, but his whole, the The Matt McClain that we had in June and July, like if you add that guy to this team is going to go on a crazy run.
Mm-hmm.
But every time we hear something positive from them, it feels like it turns negative very quickly. And all we've heard is he's on track. He's looking good. He's going to start a rehab assignment in August. We even got a hard and fast date for when that rehab assignment will begin in August 12th. And you're like, it's going to take a while. We're probably looking at the maximum 3 weeks. And so he's still going to be closer to September before he's back. But again, I still think that that's like the 99 percentile in this case. And I don't know if we can trust it fully. That's the biggest disappointment to me, is that we can't trust what we have heard from the medical side of things. It's been very annoying this season.
Did you ever think at any point in the offseason that when we did a first half review, the winner of the biggest disappointment trophy would be the Reds medical staff? Like that's something. And you and I are unanimous. That is a unanimous award that we're given. But listen, Jeff, there's a lot more to talk about, and it's time to turn the ship over to the folks, to the everydayers. So coming up, we're going to take your questions and comments and talk about all of the things that you want to talk about here in the chat on this live edition of Locked On Reds. That's coming up right after this.
Today's episode of Locked On Reds is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah! The Reds are about to hit the road for 9 games as the All-Star break concludes this weekend. They're going to be in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, not the state, and they're going to head to Atlanta for the first 6 of those 9 games, and Booking.com is the way to follow along with the team. You're going to find some great spots because they've got hotels, they got condos, they got resorts, they got all sorts of great stuff over at Booking.com, and they make it so easy. I did this for Atlanta. I just looked up Truist Park. I found the nearest hotel to it, some fun restaurants and stuff like that around there as well. Go to Booking.com and I search Truist Park, and it makes it so easy. Go to Booking.com today on their website or check out the Booking.com app. You've got so many different ways to find your next travel. They're going to make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. That's Booking.com.
I'm pretty sure out of the last break, you read the wrong break. I don't know, but at any rate, you can catch every pitch of the Reds hometown broadcast on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to read. Maybe you're supposed to go to Locked On's 24/7 streaming sports channel available to you on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's programmed 24/7 to keep you in the loop on all of the major happenings throughout sports. We've got national hosts over there. We've got local experts like Jeff and I. Locked On Sports Today has you covered all the time. So there, I did both breaks. How is that? All right, Jeff, let's dive into the questions and the comments and try to salvage whatever it is we're doing today. All right, guys, I see you've been active in the chats here. If you've got questions that were from earlier, put them in again, because I'm not going to be able to circle back. But you guys have been active and I like it. Let's start here with Malachi Hayes. It's the question on everybody's mind. When do we think Elly comes in the game today? How much do we think he will play? I have asserted, Malachi, that I want him to come in as a pinch runner. I imagine it'll be somewhere around the 3rd or the 4th inning. I'd like them to put him in as a pinch runner, and let's get that stolen base out of the way right away. Let's have that. Then he can come in and play defense after that. And when that turn comes up again, he'll get his at bat and maybe get another opportunity. But that's how I want to see him come in the game. And listen, I want him to play defense and I want him to get in at bat. None of this Chris Sabo 1988 crap. We're not just pinch running with him and that's it. He needs to get to play in the field and be in this game for an extended period of time. I think that the way Major League Baseball has marketed him lately and the fact that they're making him a face of the sport is going to dictate some greater playing time. So 4th, 5th inning, and then I think he probably stays in the rest of the game.
I think it works to his advantage too that the starter at shortstop for the National League, Trey Turner, is not like right fresh off the injured list, but he hasn't been off the injured list for very long. So there could be a very easy explanation to, we're going to give him an at bat, maybe 1 or 2 at bats, depending on how quickly it all goes. And then Elly comes in for him and plays shortstop the rest of the way. I think your assessment's dead on.
So before we move on to another question, though, I want to talk about the first inning of the All-Star game, because here's what I want to see happen. I want to see Paul Skeens strike out the first two batters that he faces. And I want to see him look at the plate, and I want to see him intentionally walk that third batter because he wants Judge. Because Paul Skeens is only pitching the first inning. Judge is batting fourth. Yeah. Judge is batting fourth. I want Paul Skeens to strike out the first two, say, no, point to first base, and say, I want Judge. That's how I want to see that go.
Because that's what this is about. Like the All-Star game now, it's not, and you know, people always talk about this. It's not what it used to be. It's not about who wins and who loses. It's just about fun matchups that you don't get to see very often. I mean, when are we going to see Paul Skeens face Aaron Judge on national TV? Like, you know, God forbid it's a World Series, but you know, we're talking about a battle that we won't get to see very often. Because I saw somebody on Twitter say, what's the battle you're most looking forward to seeing? And they put Skeens and Soto up there because Juan Soto will bat in the first three hitters. But it's like, yeah, no, give me that matchup of him and Judge, because I would love to see that. Because I felt like the Reds pitchers kind of handled Aaron Judge pretty well. Aaron Judge had a homer in that series, but for the most part, the Reds handled him pretty well, and want to see what Paul Skeens does with him.
All right, here's from our buddy Scott Campbell. First question, he says, which of these do you keep in the rotation, move to the bullpen, or trade for needs? Lodolo, Spires, Ashcraft. Lodolo's going nowhere. He's ace 1B. Yeah. Spires is interesting, Jeff. Are we Spires believers yet? Or is he, where are you a believer?
I'm going on record. I'm going on record and saying that I believe Carson Spires is a solid number 4, number 5 starter.
Okay, that's where I was going to ask you next. Where are you going to place him? And I think that's right. I feel like probably I want to see 5, but yeah. I want to see a little bit more from him. But you know, thus far in 10 games, 5 of those starts, he's got a 3.83 ERA. His strikeouts per 9, 7.9, a little low for my lovin', but it's fine. Walks per 9 though, 1.7. So he has done a job while he's been in there. And I want this to be who he is. And we said this with Andrew Abbott, right? When he first came up and he was like, nobody could hit him. And we were like, okay, let's wait a minute and see where we are. And Andrew Abbott has answered back, and he's clearly a number 3 type pitcher rotation dude for a long time. So yeah, I want to believe Spires is a number 5 guy. I feel like he's a number 5 guy, but the second half of the season, or the post All-Star break portion of the season, is going to answer those questions. If he can continue to be this guy, then I see no reason why he's not the Reds' number 5 starter next season. I just that kind of cements himself in there.
The shoulder impingement gives me a little bit of pause, but they said he's only going to miss 1 start, so shouldn't be too bad. But yeah, like, I mean, is he going to be a guy that has to miss time here or there? That will probably make him look more like a relief pitcher, but I don't know, man. I love what I've seen so far. I kind of mark him down as number 5 guy. I think Graham Ashcraft's a bullpen guy. I don't know that Graham Ashcraft, and I love Graham Ashcraft. I don't think he can pitch without using maximum effort. Like he is a all go, no slow type pitcher. He wants to throw that cutter 98 to 100 miles an hour. He wants to throw that biting slider. But if he's got to throw for 6 innings, he can't do that for 6 innings. Yep. So make him a relief pitcher. And I know that there's been, you know, Jeff Brantley and Chris.
Could he be a closer?
Yeah.
Is that stuff? 100%. Does that stuff play well enough to be the closer next year?
That cut fastball in a situation where you got to get a swing and miss or you got to get a ground ball, I firmly believe that he can do that. I think that he should be the guy pushing Alexis Diaz.
That sounds kind of like a dude that the Yankees used to run out there for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm. Cut fastball, man. I mean, that's all that Mariano Rivera needed. You know, and there's been a couple of situations where Chris Welsh on the TV broadcast has been saying things like that. Like we'll see, like he compared, what was it? Clase, Emmanuel Clase from the Guardians. Clase's got a 100 mile an hour cutter. And he's just like, Graham Ashcraft could do that. If you told Graham Ashcraft, you got 1 inning, you need to get 3 outs, go out there and throw as hard as you can. I think that's what he could be. That's where I really get into this. And then, you know, the injuries are something, but it's his longevity. He cannot pitch at 85 to 90% and be effective. He has to be a 100% or 110% thrower.
John Huss checks in and says the Reds cannot continue to lose games like they did last Sunday against the Rockies. The margin for error is beyond thin. Cannot afford more casual losses. I agree with this, and I wanted to talk about this in the first show out of the break, but this is as good a time as any, Jeff. I think they've used up their casual losses is a great way to put this. They've used up their throwaways, I guess. I asked you the other day if you thought David Bell was managing that game as a throwaway when it got a little bit out of hand. And I think those opportunities are gone. They have to treat every series like a playoff series. Are they going to win every series in the second half? They're not, but they need to act like they need to because the margin is thin. The entirety of the National League, absent the Marlins and the Rockies, are competing for this last playoff spot. And you can't afford to lay down against the team that you're supposed to beat. And you can't afford to blow leads and blow games that you clearly should win. And they did that on Sunday. They should have won that game. Our guy Fernando Cruz was bad Fernando Cruz again. And it cost them a game. And those opportunities, gee, golly darn, we'll get them tomorrow. That stuff's over with. I don't want to hear David Bell one more time say, we're playing well. We're right where we need to be. Everybody's doing exactly what, shut up. You need to win.
I think too, I compare the throwaway game, to be the most positive you could possibly be about a game like that. I'm like, it's a load management game. Like in the NBA, there are teams that play load management games. I remember one time I went to Cleveland to watch the Cavs play the Warriors, and the Warriors had everybody that you could name on the bench with some sort of injury, and they had their B squad in. And while you don't do that in baseball because you can't, you can clearly tell that there are some guys that are, maybe not given 100% during a game. And then the manager sees that, and so they're just like, all right, we got the guys who we can call out of the bullpen in this type of a situation where we don't have to use our best guys, or this starting pitcher, we can throw him out there until his arm falls off, and if he gives up 7 runs, he gives up 7 runs, who knows? Like, that's the kind of equivalent in baseball, and I feel like David Bell has done a lot of that in the first half of this season, and you're right, I don't think he can do it anymore. Like, we're to the point where you cannot be giving away games or managing games on the hope that you'll win. You got to manage every single game. We used to complain that David Bell managed every game like it was Game 7. Now we kind of want him to.
We did do that.
Now we kind of want him to.
We did, in fact, do that. That is true. All right, let's go to this. This is a great question from Carrie. What do you do with the outfield when TJ and Stuart Fairchild come back? So you've got Benson, you've got Rece Hinds, you've got Spencer Steer, TJ Friedel comes back, Stuart Fairchild comes back, Austin Slater's out there. What do you do? Plus, let's not forget Jake Fraley in this mix as well.
I think when TJ comes back, I think you consider sending Will Benson down. If
Rece Hinds is still on a heater,
if he's still doing his thing,
yeah.
Which right now, I mean, Sunday was the first game that he went over, so it's like, yeah, he's got a little bit of a leash here that he can work with. We're not talking about like one more over game and he's out of here. And TJ Friedel, it's going to be a week to 10 days before that happens. Stu, I haven't heard any update. Like when he went on the IL, they're just like, oh no, it's procedural, it'll be fast. Haven't heard a peep since then. Like when he's coming back, if he's coming back. Who knows? They said spinal disc injury, which I'm like, spinal disc injury doesn't sound like a procedural reason to put somebody on the IL, but whatever. But I do think that he has earned a spot as like the fourth.
Where are we at on TJ Friedel? 10 days?
Yeah,
14 days?
7 to 10 days is what they were saying. I'm not sure if that's like an exact timetable, but
right, and that's for rehab, right? That's for rehab assignment, not for projected major league action.
And I think
so there's little time to figure this out, but yeah, it's going to be crowded.
You also have the ability that, okay, you bring back, say TJ and Stu come back at the same time. You have the ability to move Steer to the infield, like first base, and have Candelario play third and have Noelvi Marte clear his head a little bit. there's a couple of clear their head candidates of Noelvi Marte and Will Benson.
Let's stay on that one for a minute, because we haven't really talked a whole lot about it, but Nick's in the chat and ready to go with it. At what point do you become concerned about Marte? When is it acceptable to send him down? I think right now is acceptable to send him down. If what you said just plays out and everybody comes back all in a defined period of time close together, I think Noelvi Marte could use some head clearing down at AAA and maybe try again here later.
There's definitely, though, a case to be made that all of this is going to work itself out, because I don't know how close any of these guys are. Like, there's just no updates other than the 7 to 10 days for TJ Friedel. But I'm guessing he spends probably 2 or 3 days on rehab and then he comes back. But yeah, Noelvi Marte, man, like, what are we doing here? His last 5 games have just been so rough. He had a multi-hit game on July 10th against the Rockies. And since then, he's gone 2 for 12. And those 2 were singles? Yeah, 2 singles.
Yeah,
so,
his slash line's 175, 209, 254 for Noelvi Marte.
OPS plus of 28.
Yeah.
72% below league average.
And if he's not going to get going, I mean, it's not like he's available to the Reds should they capture that final playoff spot anyway. I don't have a problem with them sending him down and saying, well, we'll see you in spring training. You figure it out between now and then and try and figure it out without any injections. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Because I'm kind of to that point with him. The biggest problem is, and I remember early on in the season, there were a lot of guys that had struggles that were similar to this, and I was preaching patience. The Reds don't have the luxury of patience anymore. We are past the halfway point. We are to the point where the Reds need to be hitting their stride. They need to be finding their peak performance. And as it is right now, I don't know that Noelvi Marte is part of that. As much as we hoped he would be, the Noelvi Marte that we saw last year, albeit small sample size, hasn't been anywhere near the Noelvi Marte that we've gotten this year.
Yeah, I think our buddy Carrick Melvin makes a great point. He says Marte should have stayed in Louisville till he started hitting. He wasn't ready when they brought him up. He was rusty. He absolutely was. He was a call-up of necessity. He was another one of those guys that they just needed to get up here to try and do something. And yeah,
you know what the plan was?
I send him down. What's that?
You know what the plan was? Hope. They hoped.
What a strategy.
He was right.
I'm told by some of our other podcasting friends that hope should never be the strategy, and hope was in fact the strategy. Yep. All right, Jeff, who else do we want to talk about here? Sorry, guys.
Oh, while you're looking, I got a fun question, and I'd be interested in any answers in the comment section as well to this, but I want to hear your take on this. Well, we've been joking about it for a little bit, and I joked about it today on ESPN 1530 with Tony and Austin. David Bell getting ejected from the All-Star game. What would he have to do to be ejected from the All-Star game? Because no one ever has. So, I mean, we're talking about a thing that has literally never happened. But
so I don't know that he could, because obviously, first off, he's not the. He's not the manager of the National League. He's one of the coaches.
He's a coach. Yeah.
So if it were like if it were not a staged ejection, if it was like a true ejection, he'd have to be like barking balls and strikes or something from the dugout, which I don't know why you would do that in an All-Star game.
Right.
What would be more fun is for David Bell to kind of saunter out there for something and, kind of lean into the home plate umpire and be like, okay, so listen. What's going to happen here is I'm going to kick a little dirt at you and you're going to throw me out of this game because I have a flight to catch. An ejection like that would be kind of fun, I think.
There's a good barbecue joint that I have been dying for all day.
He's trying to
get out of here.
He's trying to get over to Texas Live so he can get a good seat.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. And if you've not been to Globe Life in Arlington, the way the ballpark is situated, great new facility. The old ballpark still exists. They use it for UFL football, some other things. Right in between those two facilities is a 3-story bar called Texas Live, and you have to go. And maybe that's why David Bell wants to get ejected. It's fantastic. All right, Jeff, I got one for us. This is from our buddy Malachi. Do we think Steer should just be the everyday first baseman? Yes. My answer to this is yes. If you get all these outfielders back and you can free up Spencer Steer from left field, I would play him exclusively at first base the rest of the way.
This year,
with a DH opportunity here and there to kind of get other guys moving around. But I wouldn't play Spencer Steer in left field in moving forward if you get TJ Friedel and Fairchild back, and just I think it's the best utilization to get the most bats in the lineup, right? If you then are platooning all of the outfield positions, you put Steer at first with some DH opportunities, then you can move Candelario to third, you can send Noelvi down, and now we're cooking with gas.
And I think too, this might be a counterpoint to my idea of sending down Marte, is that the good reason that Steer can continue to play first is that Candelario is still dealing with the tendonitis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, could you keep him at DH for most of the rest of the year and get rid of the tendonitis? I don't know that the answer to that's yes, but it's probably a lot better than trying to play him in the field and getting rid of the tendonitis. So yeah, I think that Steer, at least for the rest of this year, should be mostly first base with just a tiny little bit of outfield and DH and stuff.
Along this line, looking down the road just a touch, when we get Matt McLain back, if we get Matt McLain back, how do you feel about Jonathan India, third baseman?
I mean, that's what he was drafted, where he was drafted at. Has he played any third base in the majors?
I don't think that he has. Maybe of emergency somewhere along the way.
No, he hasn't. It's only been second base.
Right.
That's the thing too, because it's like, well, they were working him out in left field. You might be able to do that. I don't.
How do you feel about an infield of Elly De La Cruz at third, Matt McLain at short, Jonathan India at second base? Which of those defensive configurations do you prefer?
I'd rather have Elly at third than India. I do think the biggest thing with that though is, like, I still feel like the best middle infield combination is Elly and McLain. But I'd rather have India's bat in the lineup than Marte. I think you probably, in that case, you probably move Elly to third and McLain at short, because I don't think you can put India at third. Like, I know, and I even made the point just now that he was drafted as a third baseman, but I don't think that's something they could do.
All right, there's some crosstalk in the chat, Jeff, about your guy Roker in Oakland. Are you still all in on going and picking him up, or did the Austin Slater trade tamp down your we need to go get an outfielder vibes? Like, where are you at on this? Where and when do you think the Reds need to make a move? Do they still need to make an outfield move right this minute? I mean, we just talked about how crowded the outfield's going to be. What are you doing here?
Did you notice in how crowded the outfield is that we didn't mention him? Like, it's not really because we forgot about him. Like, it's look, Austin Slater's here for depth. I'm not looking at him and thinking that he's fixing anything. No, I think they should go get Brent Rooker right now. Like, he was quite possibly the biggest all-star snub of both the AL and the NL. Like, look at his stats and you tell me he's not an all-star. He should have been an all-star. But I mean, he's hitting over 290, has over 20 homers already. His OPS is amazing. Go, and I would really love it. Like, he is my number one target if I had any say in.
And so the deal, you're on the phone, and the Oakland, Sacramento, Las Vegas, Western Hemisphere A's say, all right, well, let's talk about it. Cam Collier is a starting point.
Yeah.
And you do that deal. You give them more than Cam Collier. They're going to want more. Like, they're going. Let me rephrase. They're going to want more than Cam Collier. What are you going to give them?
We did a good segment with Sully. Actually, Sully's filling in for Locked On A's right now, and he did a good segment. He's just like, look, as much as we need quality, we need quantity. So there's a possibility here where you play it up and maybe you go get Mason Miller. Maybe you add in a Miguel Andujar and you get some outfield depth or something like that. But yeah, if it's like Cam Collier and I don't know, Julian Aguiar, if it's Cam Collier and maybe Zach Maxwell,
Cam Collier and Chase Petty,
just for Rooker, that's too
mm-hmm.
much. Yeah.
I bet you that's the ask, especially with the Reds drafting a pitcher again. I bet you that's the ask. Starting pitcher and a phenom.
Go Ty Floyd. I wouldn't go Chase Petty.
All right. While we're on the subject of trades, I saw this reported, and you and I haven't really talked about it. I'm interested in your take on this. Jim asks about the rumors concerning the Yankees looking at Reds relievers. They did, in fact, have some scouts out checking out Reds bullpen arms. Sims, Suter, Cruz. What do you think? The Reds going to move a bullpen arm when they probably need to be picking up a bullpen arm?
I think if they lose some more ground in the wild card, they will. I think that this series, and we're going to talk about it a lot more later this week, but the series with Washington is super key to the rest of the season because you're talking about a team that is in a similar position to the Reds where it's like they're teetering on the edge of being in the wild card race, but you can kind of see them falling off. If the Reds can help them continue to fade, then I think that the Reds continue to be in the buyer category. I think that if they lose to the Nationals, then we might start hearing more of these rumors. But I don't think if the Reds fancy themselves a wild card contender, they're not going to be trading any relief pitcher to anybody.
Malachi says regarding trading for an outfielder, if it was for Lay Thomas, he would trade Collier, not for Rooker. I think that's going to be the starting price for Rooker. That's going to be his first ask, especially with him coming off his future.
I'd be curious why he doesn't want Rooker, because Rooker has crazy power numbers in an outfield that's far more vast than Great American. Like, he would go crazy in Great American.
Nick says Connor Phillips for Rooker straight up. Sounds good. Yeah, sounds great. Let's do that. Poor Connor Phillips. Listen, I interviewed Connor Phillips, and it's in the archives if you want to go check it out. He and I talked last year. He has struggled with his command and control. He is a firm hater of the automatic balls and strikes system. That is part of the problem. But that's only so much of the problem. And at some point in time, you got to throw strikes. And he has really struggled. And my hope for him is that while he's been out at the complex, he's been able to figure out whatever it is that left him where he lost his command and control, because he was just bad this year. I mean, absolutely horrible. Last time I looked at his numbers, he had walked like 50 guys in 45 innings or something. It was terrible. So I hope that he's getting right out in Arizona, and that we can reset the narrative around him next year. I feel bad for him. When I talk to him, it's evident that he wants to be better and he wants to succeed, and that the criticism bothers him. But he was bad.
I wonder, and I can't remember if it was JJ Cooper or Carlos Collazo, but it was somebody over at Baseball America was talking about Connor Phillips, and they thought that his future was in the bullpen because they thought that his command and his prowess around the strike zone fit more for a reliever and not for a starter. Kind of wonder if that's where he's moving as well. And if that's the case, that's going to be a little bit rough. I mean, he came over as a player to be named later, so it's not as if they put a lot into it. But I do remember Nick Kroll just gushing about the fact that was the guy they got for player to be named later. But I don't know, like, he hit a wall this year where he was completely different from last year and just could not hit the strike zone at all. There's never been a point where we've looked at it and said, can't wait to see him get back to the majors. And he finished last year in the majors. So that's kind of, it's been a tough thing to see. It's been a tough thing to see for him and a tough thing to see for Lyon Richardson. Like, both those guys we listed in the depth chart of the Reds starting pitching staff before the season started, and we don't really have any interest in seeing them anytime soon.
Yeah. Nick checks back in. This is a great conversation with buying and selling in bullpen arms. You can deal one or two of these pin arms and still be buyers. That's true, but it would take multiple deals, right? You'd have to trade away to get you'd have to be bringing something else in. because Austin says, what do we think of our AAA pin depth? Santillan came up and pitched decently. That was it. You know, he's been basically the closer for the bats, and that's it. I mean, Jeff, you just said the names. Maybe Kennedy comes up and you stick him in the bullpen. I don't want that. Maybe Lyon Richardson and you stick him in the bullpen. Don't want that.
And maybe Zach Maxwell. Like, Zach Maxwell hasn't made his major league debut yet, so I don't know what we have with him. Like, I know he's got a power arm and he's a big guy and he has a lot of strikeouts in the minors, but he really hasn't pitched that much at AAA for me to know. And Tony Santillan is a great story. He looked great in the spring and stuff like that. I still need to see him do it a lot more before I'm chalking it up to, okay, we can move on from, you know, a Sims or a Suter or somebody like that.
Because he's not quite the same Santillan. I mean, you watch him, he doesn't have the same snap on that delivery, and the ball's not moving something's different. And I mean, that doesn't mean he can't be successful, but yeah, I'm with you. Definitely want to see more. Malachi answered you, Jeff. Feels like Lane Thomas can play more every day over Roker, but he would love to have Roker. He just thinks Thomas is better.
I could see. I think Thomas is more well-rounded. He's not as good of a power hitter, but he's a solid hitter, and he's better defensively. Brent Rooker isn't that great defensively. If that's an option, sure. And I think that the Nationals are looking. I think the Nationals even now are more geared towards selling than buying. So if they start getting some offers for guys like Lane Thomas, I think they will be shipping them off. I still think I'm on Rooker though.
Okay. Nick with the comment of the day says he'd hate the ABS system too if he couldn't throw strikes. That's pretty smart analysis right there. I love it. I am trying to find some more, Jeff. Sorry, guys. I'm TJ Antone, guys. What happened to TJ Antone? TJ Antone had his third Tommy John surgery. If you don't follow him on Instagram, you should, because you'll get like pretty much daily workout rehab updates. He posts what he's doing, shows the work he's putting in. He looks good. He's doing the work, and he says he's going to try and come back. He wants to come back and pitch again. And I would need to go do some research of guys that have had 3 Tommy Johns and ever pitched in the major leagues again. At some point, someone's got to pull him aside and be like, yo, TJ, maybe
to his
pitching coach, maybe some
to his
broadcasting
credit,
work.
To his credit, I think somebody has, and I think he just continues to be motivated to return. And I love that for him. I love that as a story, but I mean, he is up against the odds, because I don't think I know of anybody that has had 3 Tommy John surgeries and pitched, at least pitched with some success. Maybe they came back for a few.
Was like Jose Rio? Didn't Jose Rio have 3? I feel like we talked about this when TJ got hurt again, and we looked it up, and like Jose Rio was the only example we could find of a guy that had 3 Tommy John surgeries and got back to the majors. There's got to be more than that, but I know Jose Rio did it.
That's one too that it's like, okay, well, if Jose Rio is the example, then we'll see TJ Antone in 2030.
Correct.
So that's kind of tough.
Ian Jabot due back anytime soon, Carrie asks. Ian Jabot is throwing out in Arizona and about to do some rehab outings.
The last thing that I heard is that he will begin rehab outings in August, which still leads me to believe that, I mean, because remember, he was on rehab and he had actually progressed to the point where he pitched in Dayton for a few times and they're like, okay, you look good. Let's move you up to AAA, pitch with Louisville. He was pitching back-to-back days, and then he felt the discomfort in his forearm, and that's why they shut him down. So even when he starts rehab, we're going to have to keep monitoring that very closely to see. I think if they get him back at all, it's going to be in September.
I think I know what your answer to this is going to be, but I'm going to put it up here and make you talk about it anyway for funsies. Jake says Rhett Lauder would be a good bullpen piece for a playoff push. It's how Adam Wainwright got his start. Jeff?
It just doesn't work. Like, teams don't do that anymore. And I mean, I think like the Rays have done it a little bit, but they're not exactly the poster child to compare anybody to. Like, I remember we were talking about the Reds front office strategy and wanting to be more like the Rays, and it's just like, well, if everybody could do it, then you wouldn't see payrolls as high as they are. If everybody could do pitching development the way that the Rays do, then they wouldn't be paying as much as they pay for pitching, because the Rays don't pay for pitching. I just don't know that is feasible in this day and age. And plus, it's a different focus. It's a different lifestyle. It's a different routine, because we've talked to multiple pitchers that say this. And Lucas Sims himself came up as a starting pitcher with the Braves, immediately switched to the bullpen very quickly into his major league career. After he was traded to the Reds, they flirted with the idea of moving him to the rotation, and then it was bullpen the rest of the way. Like, I feel like if you get a guy used to a certain routine, it's very hard to yank him out of that routine and put him into a new one. So I think that if they're going to do anything with Rhett Lauder, they're not going to, I mean, he's going to be a starter. They're not going to call him up as a reliever.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I don't see any scenario where Rhett Lauder is pitching out of the Reds bullpen ever. So,
because remember there was that idea preseason this year that the Reds were going to do that with Nick Lodolo. Like, Fangraphs was predicting it. Fangraphs had him pitching in like 30 games and only starting 16 of them, or something like that. In their
but your good buddy Steve-O said there is absolutely no way.
Yeah, we were all like, "What?"
Pitching him out of the bullpen.
Who the heck came up with that idea? Like, no, it's the idea that a pitcher can switch between, like, you know, we kind of do this with position players a lot, where we say, well, they can play multiple positions. Pitchers cannot pitch multiple positions. Like, once you are a relief pitcher, it's a totally different routine than when you're a starting pitcher. And I feel like, was it Chase Petty, or I felt like we talked to either Rhett Lauder or Chase Petty about this. I felt like I might have gotten the chance to talk to him about that. The difference between being a starter and being a relief pitcher. Because when you're a starter, there's like built-in build-up to your next appearance. When you are a relief pitcher, you don't know when your next appearance is, so you always have to be built up in some way. It's just, it's so different. I couldn't see the Reds doing this with Rhett Lauder.
Malachi asked, why don't we use Alexis Diaz in non-closing situations? Because he's terrible in non-closing situations. He is Raisel Iglesias. He can't get himself amped up to pitch in non-save situations. Listen, we didn't talk about him as a disappointment, Jeff, but he's a disappointment.
He's on that list for sure.
Alexis Diaz, I don't understand what happened. I'm ready for a new closer, and there's your hot take of the day. I am the second that he has a good 2 or 3 week stretch, I would trade him. As soon as he can get his value back up, I would trade him and get whatever you can get for him, because I've seen enough. He's not a consistently good closer. He walks too many batters. He's not the long-term closing future of this team. So get his value up a little bit and flip him.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, but I have been disappointed in his performances this year. But you're right. In non-save situations, according to Baseball Reference, he has pitched 16 1/3 innings in non-save situations. He has a 4.96 ERA. In 19 innings in save situations, he has a 3.7 ERA. So he does get amped up differently for a save situation. Although it's interesting, because in non-save situations, he has a higher strikeout rate than in save situations. I'm going to go down a stat rabbit hole. I'm not going to do that. But just to prove your point about the non-save situations there.
Appreciate that.
I don't agree.
So we're in agreement.
Trade him. Moving on.
Trade him.
No.
Trade him.
Not in agreement on that.
Trade him. Kerry wants to know what's the latest on Brandon Williamson. He's about to ramp it back up again, right? Wasn't that our last injury update? So you guys, the Reds picked a day like a week and a half ago, and for whatever reason, just dumped updates on everybody. And a lot of this got lost in the shuffle because they just gave one great big injury update. But I believe Brandon Williamson's about ready to start throwing again.
Yes. He's going to start throwing. I think that they believe he can be ready for September. I don't know what that looks like, and if there is any setbacks or anything like that, because remember, he's coming back from a shoulder. Something that I kind of thought was going to end his season. I didn't think that he was going to be back. So if we see him, we might see him for 2 or 3 starts, I think, maximum.
I wonder, and I talked about this at the time, Jeff, if he's ready to go, say September 1, I would love to see the Reds go with a 6-man rotation through the month of September and kind of give everybody some extra days and save up some innings and rather than try to figure out where you're going to put Brandon Williamson, just roll with 6 starters. And I understand that maybe short something else, but nobody loves to play shorthanded more than your Cincinnati Reds. So I think it works, and I think it helps the team long term, especially if they're in the playoff hunt for that wild card spot or in a wild card spot. Just seems to make sense to me to go that route.
The only thing with that is, who do you knock out of the bullpen then?
I'm not sure. Who would we knock out of the bullpen? Let's look.
Justin Wilson? You would have to cut him.
You'd have to cut him. Who's got options? Sam Mull?
Diaz, Cruz. I forget if Mull has options or not.
Probably Sam Mull. I think he does have options. So he'd be the guy, and then Justin Wilson would be your lefty down there.
Sam Mull does have an option.
And again, just talking about that for a month, then you go with a reliever heavy bullpen for the postseason. So,
right. That'd be interesting. I hope that he does come back and we see him at least for a little bit. Brandon Williamson, getting back to him. Just because it feels like there are guys like that we either haven't seen very much of or any at all that we really would like to see a little bit from this year, if nothing else but just for their own personal career development. Because like CES, we're not going to see for the rest of the season. And the little bit that we did see feels like we have knocked him down a peg as far as where he sits on this roster for the future. Noel V. Marte, it kind of feels like he's knocking himself down a peg. Like, are we reconsidering who's part of the core moving forward? And did we put those guys in the core too quickly when it comes to their positioning? Like, what does Brandon Williamson look like for the future of this pitching staff, and is he a part of it? That's going to be an interesting thing to see if he can come back this year at all.
Let's do a couple rapid fire things here. John says that Rhett Lauder could be a Skeens, from your lips to God's ears. Jake says, well, it worked for Adam Wainwright starting off in the bullpen. I still say no. Carrie wants to know, what is the Steve-O home run count up to? Ladies and gentlemen, 30 to go. Tyler Stevenson just has to hit 30 home runs in the second half.
How many games he has to do that? Like,
doesn't matter. It's got, I believe in Tyler.
65?
Ty Steve. 40 home runs.
We're going to hit a home run like every other game.
We're going to get it done. Martinez is a prime example of what Jeff was talking about. That is absolutely right. The differences in the way that he pitches when he starts a game versus comes from the bullpen, you can see it. It's just right there, whether you want to look at the stats or you want to do an eye test. If you're looking for an example of what Jeff was talking about, Nick Martinez is your guy on that, because there's definitely a difference. Alex Blandino has entered the chat, not personally, but his name anyway. Cool. Yeah, he's trying to master that knuckleball. He's got smacked around a little bit. You know, it's obviously an experiment, but how cool would it be, Jeff, if he could work his way back to the major leagues and bring that knuckleball to Great American Ballpark?
That's going to be a lot of fun, especially to watch that development, because knuckleballers are just, man, it's fun to watch them pitch. I remember watching Tim Wakefield pitch on different days, and even R.A. Dickey, I enjoyed watching him pitch. Like, knuckleballers are fun to watch, and they got to be a nerve, because I've never had a scenario where they've pitched on our team, so I've never had the scenario of actually rooting for a knuckleballer. I am guessing that is a little bit precarious, but you know, hopefully we get
imagine the catching. You imagine the catching staff. Your team goes out and signs a big knuckler, and you know, just what that conversation with J.R. House would be, something along the lines of, listen, I didn't sign up for this crap, and you guys aren't paying me enough to go out there and look like an idiot. So I need a raise if you're going to make me catch a knuckleball.
I envision a scenario like Nick Krall's like, all right, and he got everybody together in a room. He's like, all right, we've signed Joe Knuckleballer, and Stevenson and Maley are in the back going, excuse me.
Question.
We did what? Like, I just don't see them being super happy about that. But yeah, because knuckleballers don't know where the pitch is going either. So if the catchers really got to figure that one out.
Nick says this team could look so different post break with people getting healthy and deadline coming. I agree. I
think they're going to be
as
aggressive. I think they're going to go
yeah,
get somebody. I do.
As angsty as we've been, they're 3 games out of a wild card. They're less than 10 games back in the Central. I mean, can they move on the Central? I don't know, but they're definitely in this wild card conversation, and they've done it with bubblegum and Band-Aids. Yeah. So we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what this team could be because they haven't fielded a team that we expected to have. So yeah, the second half is going to be interesting. Just anybody that says right now, it's over, they're out of it, done deal. How can you possibly be on that bandwagon? How can you look at 3 games out of a wild card? How can you look at the players that are coming back and think this team might not upgrade its position in the standings? There is a lot of things that's going to happen between now and the end of the regular season.
Yes, and I think that's a perfect place to end today's podcast. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds live edition of the show. Thank you for participating in the comments section for all the people that did. And if you're checking this out, after the fact, if you're watching the replay of this, make sure you join us next time, which the next time will actually be this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. This was a little bit more of an impromptu one, and we even pushed it back to 3:30. That was part of me because my day has been crazy, but 3 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, we will have another live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Hope you guys join us for that. But until then,
before you go, if you haven't done it yet, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, make the YouTube algorithm work for Reds fans. Let's get this thing out to everybody that wants to listen and talk Cincinnati Reds baseball, because we want to talk Cincinnati Reds baseball with you. We want to talk baseball with them because we want to keep all of you guys locked on Reds every single day. See you tomorrow. Trade Alexis Diaz. Woo!
No.
Hot take.
No.
Fire.